Morning and welcome to the meeting of Governance and Audit Committee today, 24th of June 2021. Croeso mawr I chi gyd. Just to make you aware, today's meeting will be recorded. Recording has now started. I would also like to welcome any members of the public and press to today's meeting. Can I kindly ask you to observe the meeting only, as you're not allowed to speak or participate. Everyone, please ensure that your phones are switched to silence for the duration of the meeting or switched off. In addition, can I refer you to the protocols for remote meetings which have been previously circulated, namely your microphones should be switched to mute unless you're speaking. Should you wish to ask a question or make a comment, can you please indicate either via the chat function or by raising your electronic hand via Teams. I will assume that you've all read the paperwork before us today prior to the meeting. Please only use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak as an alternative to the electronic hand function or to raise any technical issues or difficulties. When asking a question, can you please indicate which page number you're referring to? So the next item, the first item actually on the agenda, is to do the roll call. I'm Councillor Del Morgan, the chair of today's meeting. Fi'r Cadeirydd. Nicola, would you please now take the roll call?
Thank you, Chair. I'll mark yourself as present, Councillor Morgan. So we have Councillor Purcell, Vice Chair.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Renkeys.
Present.
No? Ah,
Present.
thank you. Thank you. Councillor Freegard.
Present.
Councillor Miller. Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Present.
Councillor Maisen.
Yeah, presennol.
Councillor Taylor.
Here, Nicola.
Thank you. Councillor Woolcock.
Yeah, presennol Cadeirydd.
Thank you. Councillor Richards.
Presennol, present.
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Oliver Davis and Councillor Herin Kerry Clark today. Then we've got voting lay member Joanna Jenkins.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Jo. And then we have officers Karen Jones.
Present.
Craig Griffiths.
Present.
Hugh Jones.
Yeah, present, Nicola.
Anne Marie O'Donnell.
Present, Nicola.
Thank you. Stephen Davis.
Present.
Diane Mulligan.
Present.
Then we have Audit Wales, Gillian Gillett.
Present.
Thank you. And today with us we have two invitees, Rod Olcott and Jack Straw. Have I missed anybody? No. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch yn fawr, Nicola, thank you. Item 2 is Chair's announcements. I just want to say very briefly in advance of today's meeting then a word of thanks to our two presenters, our external presenters, for their work and our own officers for the cooperation and the way in which this report has been able to come back to us fairly swiftly. So diolch yn fawr iawn am y gwaith. Thank you very much in advance. I have no further announcements, so we're going on to agenda item 3, which is declarations of interest. Can members indicate whether you have any? I see none. Therefore, we move swiftly on to agenda item 4. This is the independent external assurance reports and action plan to respond to the findings and recommendations. And the Chief Executive will introduce this. Chief Executive Officer Karen Jones. I'll hand over to you now, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I thought for the benefit of anybody external to the Council, members of the public and the press, it would be helpful if I just very briefly introduced the report, just to give the context around it. As members of the committee will know, I came to speak to you on the 15th of March earlier this year to draw your attention to an audio tape, an edited version of an audio tape, I should say, that had been released on social media, where the former leader of the Council had made a number of remarks about a number of matters. And I advised you at that time that I thought it was important that we commissioned some additional assurance work to bottom out some of the issues that were covered on the tape. And I'd asked Mr. Rod Olcott, who was formerly a senior manager with Audit Wales, supported by Mr Jack Straw, who's a former Chief Executive of Swansea Council, to undertake that review on my behalf. You received a copy of the terms of reference that I set for the review when we met on the 15th of March. And what the committee is considering today is the full and final reports that I've received from the independent reviewers. I gave you an undertaking at the time that I commissioned the review that it would come back to the committee, so that's what we're doing. And what I've also presented with the report, Chair, is my action plan to respond to the findings and recommendations that have been made. Because of the way in which the evidence in the full reports has been presented, where it is possible to identify individual people, we have to consider the evidence that's within the full reports, within the private section of the committee. But to try and make the process as open as transparent as possible, I've extracted the full findings and recommendations from the reports that Jack and Rod have put together, and they are presented in the open part of the papers. And my action plan then will directly address that information. So we've put as much information as possible into the public domain, Chair, and the reasons why the evidence that underpins the findings and recommendations are in private is because there are individual people named, or it's possible to identify individual people. And obviously the council's got duties around data protection that it has to be mindful of. So I hope that that's helpful to anybody that's listening in or is dialed into the call this morning. So they're clear about what started this process, what we're doing here in the committee this morning. And with that, Chair, I think we're probably ready to move into considering the reports when you're ready, and then we'll come back into the public session where I can explain then the actions I've already taken and the actions I intend to take to deal with the entirety of the findings and recommendations. I should say that we are not dealing with the conduct of individual people. I think it's really important to make that point. The review was all about the processes and systems of governance. So how we make decisions within the capital programme, the processes we have around the way we bring school reorganisation proposals forward, and the protocol that governs the relationship between members and officers. So we are not talking about the conduct of members or the conduct of officers. I know the members understand that, but I just want anybody listening in to be clear about that as well.
Diolch, Karen, thank you. All members in the pre-briefing have been explained all of this in terms of the procedure. So members, are you happy that we proceed in this way? Therefore, what we're now going to do is to go into private session. We'll reconvene to open session after agenda item 6. If the press or public would like to be invited back to that meeting on the completion of agenda item 6, you need to please indicate via the electronic hand. You'll be then invited back to the meeting. On my screen, I see no members of the public actually present at the moment anyway, but bear in mind, colleagues, that this part of the meeting is being recorded for access later. So, okay, access to meetings. This is item 5. That's pursuant to section 100A(4) and 5 of the Local Government Act 1972. The public be excluded for the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 12 and 15 of part 4 of the schedule 12A of the above act. Can I please have a proposer and seconder to move into private?
I move, Chair.
I'll second.
Diolch, Annette. All members in agreement. Therefore, can we now make sure that any members of press or public, if they've joined since I've looked last, then would